I'm sorry. Yeah, the board's bring up the agenda items. Morning, how you doing? Doing well. I just want to make sure that your system is connected.
I'll check right now.
We're just making sure that that's connected.
Hey.
That's
Good, I appreciate that. Who sits here for? Sometimes I got plugged in, right?
Excuse me?
Where'd you pull the stuff out of the binder and leave it in just here?
But the planning commission also sits there too.
Oh, it's constant.
That was me. I admit it. I admit it.
You get to the airport, all right?
Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
We're good.
Did you call me?
Pardon me? Yeah, see if you're on your way in. Was it good? That's all right. I was at the Tiffany Letters at I keep up that pickup. It's got to last 20 years. I'm pulling 20 like I told you. I'm going to pull 20. Yeah. And I'm 40. So I'm right behind you. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. 100%. Yeah, when I read that, I was like, why? Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Last thing intersection. You're running behind now, Timmy. I thought you ran a good meeting.
Huh?
I thought you ran a good meeting. 903.
I know. All right.
I don't care.
Good morning, and thank you for coming to today's San Benito County Board of Supervisors regular meeting for April 25th, 2017. Call to order at 9:02. Pledge allegiance. Supervisor Patella, will you please lead us off?
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Supervisor Patella.
Thank you.
Can I have a acknowledgement certificate of posting?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries. Now we will go into presentations. The first presentation will be by Supervisor Patello, approved proclamation declaring May as Water Awareness Month. Did I saw Sean?
I'll make a motion to approve Water Awareness Month for May for 2017.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to say I was up here 2 years ago. Things were looking really dire with our water supply. It's good to see all this rain, snow, and all that good stuff. But I need to remind people to change the
Microphone, please. Microphone, please.
It's not on. There we go.
Thank you.
It's both good and bad being number one up here. Anyway, I just want to say, things here in California, we've had a great winter as far as our water supply goes, a lot of snow. We have 100% allocation for both ag and for the municipalities, but it can change in a minute. We all know if you lived in California for a while, droughts come and go. We can't really afford to cut back on water conservation. When I was a kid growing up in this state, there were 16 million people. There's 39 million people now. There's 50 million projected by 2030. Same amount of water. And we got all kinds of competing needs. The specter of climate uncertainty is another thing we have to worry about. So we need to be careful with our water. My agency can help you. We're the Water Resources Association, 637-4378, WRASBC.org.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Novak, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, as you just heard, we made the proclamation that May is Water Awareness Month. And this is kind of a in between the winter and rainy months and the dry period of time that California is entering into. And as we all know, water is the source of life for our homes, and young people as old, and the importance in agriculture is unsaid. And it's great to have 100% allocation. I don't remember the last time that has happened.
I've been here for 14 years, and it hasn't happened since I've been here. So.
Right. And it's good, but that doesn't mean that we all should not get in the habit of conserving water and protecting its quality,
Exactly.
because it does need to be a renewable resource for us. And as you stated, our state is growing. We have more people coming. We need jobs, and water is the key for that. And so I won't read the whole proclamation because it's 2 pages long, but we certainly want to emphasize the importance of Water Awareness Month, and thank you for your efforts in spreading the word.
You're welcome. And in May, it starts our irrigation season for residential. It's just like a bell curve. You'll start seeing it rising till August. So call me. We can come out, check your irrigation system, because people use a lot of water out in their landscapes. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Supervisor Munsters will now present the Mental Health Month proclamation. If there's someone here,
And I'd like to make a motion on the proclamation.
is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries. Come to the podium. Thank you.
So I want to point out that I actually remembered to wear my green tie that you guys gave us, I think, a year or two ago.
It was last year.
Well, last year, okay. So anyway.
It's a beautiful tie.
So I'd like to read some of this proclamation. Recognizing May as Mental Health Month in San Bernardino County. Whereas the month of May is annually recognized nationally and throughout our state as Mental Health Month in celebration of the efforts to eliminate social stigma attached to mental illness and to provide hope and recovery. And whereas thousands of individuals and families across the U.S. have and will experience the symptoms of mental illness. And whereas the symptoms of mental illness can be managed or eliminated through early intervention or comprehensive treatment, services, intervention, and whereas we must eliminate the social disparity that exists in society, willingness to equally accept mental illness in the same manner as physical ailment, allowing the individuals to freely step forward and access the support and services that lead to hope and recovery. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors, in recognition of the importance of eliminating the social stigma attached to individuals experiencing mental illness and in embrace of the concept that individuals who experience mental illness can recover, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2017 as Mental Health Month in San Bernardino County. Nancy?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you want to say anything?
I'll say briefly, if you'd like.
Yeah.
Okay. On behalf of the Behavioral Health Department, we'd like to thank the board and all the Board of Supervisors for the proclamation. This means a lot to our clients. We do work to reduce stigma and promote wellness, hope, and recovery in the community. This means a lot to our clients. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Now we go to public comments. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board on items of interest not appearing in the agenda. No action may be taken unless provided by Government Code Section 54954-2. Chase, do we have any speaker cards?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mike Howard.
Good morning. My name is Mike Howard. I'd like to read a letter that I submitted April 17th to the Board of Supervisors and the State Water Board, as well as State Assembly, District 30, Ana Caballero, regarding the Tres Pinos Water District. In October 2016, I was honored to be appointed by the San Benito County Board of Supervisors to serve as director of the Tres Pinos Water Board. I am new at public service. I am inexperienced and awkward, but I am an old businessman. I am hardened, experienced, and comfortable. I have common sense. I believe in transparency, and I believe in accountability and a strong sense of community. I'm also a highly observant of public perception. I believe it is my duty to report to you my observations of my time of public service and also my concerns not only over the past 6 months, but over the 26 years that I have been a customer of the Tres Pinos Water District. Think of it as a progress report, but with no progress. Yes, I am too fresh and too eager, as I was told by our board president. But I, as well as the public, should not be intimidated or silenced if tough questions are asked. I don't believe in the old guard motto. New ideas should be encouraged, and yes, questions should be asked, hard questions. The old guard, for especially as long as they have been on the board, should have answers. I didn't find many. What I did find is a dysfunctional organization that is and has been completely overwhelmed with no clear vision. This group is operated with no budget. There is no long-term capital plan. There is no preventative maintenance plan. And this group is operated without director's insurance because no insurance company would cover them. The meeting and agenda submittals are sent by text. This is alarming because there seems to be a lot of internal texting. There is no website. There is no official binder or record to reference ordinances or resolutions. As far as I know, they are kept on a school district-issued computer kept at the district president's house. Access to information is limited to what you are told at the meeting with very little documentation to support it. For 6 months, I was never issued keys. Although requested on several occasions, this felt odd because all other directors had keys as well as several long-term volunteers. When I arrived, there was no continuity documents or orientation for new directors. There also has been a self-imposed moratorium for over 20 years. There are conflicting stories on why this is, but one thing I do know is that if you have a problem, you fix it. A problem that is 20 years old is either mismanaged or just doesn't want to get fixed. I have a strategy in my business when there's a problem. Identify, prioritize, plan, and fix. If you don't fix, you don't exist. The district has approximately 115 customers whose rates have increased close to 90%. The majority of the customer base is low income. Late fees and property liens seem to be a large part of the district's income. I say you better hope that nobody pays on time or you're out of business. This is not a good business model. The majority of operating revenues from state or federal grants. If these agencies were aware of the financial committee's incapability of preparing a budget, would they have issued these grants? It is a fact that this organization is non-compliant regarding generally accepted accounting principles. There are significant deficiencies in internal controls that are considered material weaknesses. There is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of this entity's financial statements will not be prevented or detected. The Tres Pinos Water District does not have in place controls that would ensure the necessary accuracies. Basically, you cannot trust the financial statements. What is the corrective action plan? The response it is not cost effective for the district to hire additional staff to mitigate this. I say we already have a financial committee. How about they do their job? Another concern is that the infrastructure is antiquated but is manageable. You can't wait for bad things to happen. You have to forecast them. You have to prevent them. Currently, there is no preventative maintenance plan or long-term capital plan. I've addressed these concerns with our hired engineer, general manager, via email January 13th. This engineer was told by our board president not to respond to my concerns or answer my questions. At the February board meeting, I asked why. I was told my questions would cost too much money to answer. We pay them $40,000 a year plus. You'd think they could answer a few questions from a new director. So now the district has no problem purchasing 20 chairs, a laptop, tablet, and scanner.
Mr. Howard, I'll give you another minute.
Again, 20 chairs. The office only fits 6 to 8 people. Regarding my questions concerning not being answered, what would happen if I had asked our engineer if he was aware of potential additional well sites for our district? Would our board president instruct him to stay quiet? This is an example of what has occurred. I cannot accept this behavior. It is not transparent or ethical. However, it is a strong signal being sent that says we won't change, leave us alone, keep our secrets to ourselves. I will skip forward to my final take. As my take is lack of income is obviously lack of revenue. Revenue is generated by sales, and sales are stagnant. Expenses are increasing because infrastructure has not been maintained properly and is aging with no long-term capital plan. It is important that you are aware of this situation. I am a smart enough businessman to understand the dynamics of a no-progress mindset of this water district, and it will not change unless a higher power gets involved and takes control of a substandard and failing organization. I'm sure you all are aware of my resignation last week due to the threats that my family and I received.
Thank you, Mr. Howard.
I have copies for the press, if any of the press would like any copies of this letter.
Mr. Howard, will you please address the board, not the public?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speaker cards? Anyone else? Anyone from the public? Okay. Thank you. We will now go to department head announcements. CEO Ray.
No, I don't think we have any announcements today. Thank you.
Thank you. Board announcements. Supervisor Rivas.
No announcements, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Medina.
Nothing, sir.
Supervisor Munzer.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Yesterday, along with management analyst Louis Valdez, we took a field trip to Green Waste Facilities, which is the recycling and garbage collector provider for much of Santa Clara County, and I was very impressed with their facilities, their efforts to recycle, and realize how little we are doing that ourselves at this point. So I would encourage my fellow board members, if you have the opportunity to see their facilities, to avail yourself of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Patello.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yourself and myself had a COG meeting last week, and I really think we need to agendize very, very soon, Mr. Chairman, a discussion as far as whether or not we should be moving forward with another measure for a sales tax to address the roads, or if we should approach the issue in an alternative manner. But I would like to request that the full board could give the COG delegation some direction on that issue.
Will do. Okay.
And also, I think it's important that we discuss the treasurer auditor's potential merger again. I had a conversation with Assembly Member Caballero, and for her to kind of continue to move forward with the issue through the legislation, she needs a little bit more information, and if we could agendize that through the board, she needs to have a little bit more fiscal feasibility information, and how it would provide a higher level of service to the citizens of San Mateo County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ray, I would agree and support Supervisor Patello. Also, we'll send an invitation to Honorable Ana Caballero to come, and let's put this as ASAP on the next available
next board meeting.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good. Thank you. I have no comments. I was going to report on the COG too, but yes, we will have that discussion here at the board to see what direction we want to go in light of SB 1. So it's very important. Okay, next item. Let's move on. Next item, we'd like to actually represent. We'd like to. San Mateo County would like to represent the City Hall's newly appointed District 4 City Council Member Jim Gallego. Jim, you want to come to the podium?
Mr. Chairperson and board members, I appreciate you having me here. My last name is Gilio.
Gilio.
It's all right.
I'll learn.
I get all kinds of variations of my last name, and compared to what people have called me before, that's okay. Thank you. I wanted to take this opportunity to say a few words. Number one, I look forward to representing the district and the city of Hollister, as well as working very closely with the county. We are different here. I worked for a city in Santa Clara County. We're at the very southern tip of Santa Clara County, and Santa Clara County was all up there. Here, we are one, essentially. We are Hollister, San Benito County is one big unit, and I really look forward to working together with the board, working on different committees, and representing the city and trying to find solutions to our infrastructure issues, public safety, and working on these issues together as a group. And if you guys have any questions for me, I would appreciate those questions or be happy to answer anything, or look forward to meeting you in the future and getting to know you.
Supervisor Botello?
Yeah, I just want to wish you good luck and congratulations. We look forward to working with you too.
Great. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Anyone else, Supervisor? None? Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you. I look forward to getting to know you guys.
Thank you. We're going to change the agenda a little bit. We're going to go into closed session first, and then we'll come back after consent. So, County Council?
Yes. Item number 33, closed session, conference with labor negotiators. Agency designated representatives Allison Hayek, Ray Espinoza, Joe Paul Gonzalez, Melinda Casillas, Georgia Cochran, Steve Coffey. Pursuant to Government Code 54957, the employee organizations are Institutions Association, Law Enforcement Management, Management Employees Group, SEIU Local 521, SEIU Local 2015, Deputy Sheriff's Association, confidential management, appointed department heads, and unrepresented employees. And if there's anybody that wanted to comment before we go into closed session.
Does anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? No? Okay, we'll go to closed session. Hey, Mark, you want to remove anything out of consent?
20.
20? Anthony?
18 and 10.
Jerry? Robert? Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may too.
Okay. Are you ready? Okay.
7 and 20.
Okay. We're back from closed session. Nothing to report.
No reportable action.
Okay, thank you. Which item? Okay, do we have anyone from the public wishing to move any consent items? What number do you have?
Item 7 and item 20.
7, public, and 11?
20.
20. 7 and 20? Public. Okay. Ray, do you have any items?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to remove item number 27 off of regular agenda, please.
Remove this off regular agenda?
Not to be heard.
Not to be, just
To
remove
completely
it from the-
remove it,
okay.
not to be heard.
Okay, thank you. All right. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve the amended consent agenda. And I'm yeah, that's right.
And remove item 27 from today's agenda.
That's correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, first item. we're
Mr.
going-
Chair, could you call number 20 first before 7?
Sure, no problem. All right, number 20. Ray? Oh, wait a minute.
I pulled it.
Supervisor Medina, number 20.
Pulled number 20 for the reason of, I don't want to defer the traffic signal. We had an agreement with the developer, and we need to hold them accountable. They need to follow through with their commitment and not throw the can down the road for another year. So I think we should ask them to put up that signal as soon as possible and not a year later.
Staff, you want to respond?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. James Walgren, Interim Resource Management Agency Director. This item is really more about timing than not building or building the traffic signal. There were some issues with the City of Hollister in terms of road right-of-way that would enable the traffic signal to be designed. The goal is to have the signal constructed this summer while school is out, and we're very confident that it will be constructed this summer. The issue really is whether we stop issuing building permits or not for this project. So the original limit was set at 145 residential building permits, but that was anticipating several other developments happening at the same time, which would have generated the amount of traffic that required the signal. Well, those developments haven't occurred. So we're pretty confident that limiting it to 300 housing units, which probably won't be achieved, or 12 months, whichever comes first, is pretty safe. We do believe the signal will be, it's been approved in concept now, so we do believe the signal will be constructed this summer.
Supervisor Batalla?
Yeah, what we've done in the past is have the developer go ahead and move forward with the traffic signal, and as the other developments come in, reimburse them for the costs. And I think Fairview Road is one of the most highly traveled roads in the county. There's a lot of accidents on it. We hear about it at the fire committee. So safety is a concern, and I want to, I think that the light needs to be put in on time and by the and no deferral. Okay, it's Sunny Slope and Valley View. I'm sorry. Regardless, I think we have a development agreement in place, and compliance with that is real important. I don't think that we should jeopardize public safety in the sake of, wait for other developments to come in. The developer could be reimbursed.
Thank you, Supervisor Batalla. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And on our little tour yesterday, the city manager was participating on it, and I brought this topic up with Tim. And as James pointed out, I think there's some issues still that needs to be worked out with the city before this can go forward. My suggestion would be, can we change this, leave the 300 building permits the same, but shorten the time down to 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
Or whichever comes first, and that way it would be guaranteed to be done this summer?
I
Would
think
that be
that-
acceptable?
That's acceptable to me.
It is.
Yeah, just one thing.
Supervisor Medina.
You know, one thing that really perturbs me the most is you're saying we need time. This development's been for decades, and now you need more time. That's just a part that really, I sit here saying, well, they have the time to figure out the design of the property itself, of building the houses, but then the infrastructure comes second. We can't do that. We have to make sure the infrastructure comes first, and then the developments come second. So that's why, I would agree to the 6 months, and there's no extension after that 6 months. We have to somehow hold them accountable from today that 6 months later, that traffic light is up and running.
I'm willing to support the idea of the 6 months, as long as things trigger. In other words, start construction. Yes. Don't come back to the board, ask for another extension.
Yes, sir.
I think that we need to do that. Otherwise, I won't support the 6 months.
I think that would be fine. We can restructure
I don't want
that
you
to
to
be
come
6
back in
months.
6 months and say, "Oh wow,
Right.
we need another extension." Supervisor Rivas.
Yeah, I want to, just for the record, I want to thank Supervisor Medina for pulling this item. But I also agree with his original point. I think that this has been planned. This original agreement was decided in, I think, the winter of 2010, and I think we need to hold to it. I'm not willing to do 6 months, so I just want them to see him install a light, and let's move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let me open to the public. Anyone from the public?
Marty Richmond.
Good morning, Marty Richard from Hollister. I also pulled this item. I'm glad you got it all solved before I got here.
Sorry, Marty. We'll try our best.
If you're going to steal all my thunder, what am I going to have to say? Nothing. That's a good way to get rid of me. Okay, I won't have to get up. The deal is, that's a terrible intersection. You all know it, because it's where two lanes come to one lane. There are kids crossing over there to go to Calvary School, to the school on Sunny Slope Memorial all the time. And so, that light really needs to go in there as soon as possible. You are absolutely correct. And it is a difficult item. But, let's spur the city to move a little bit. Their letter saying we're going to get around to the right-of-way problem, if you look at it, was dated August 2016. That was 8 months ago, okay? Well, they're going to get around to it whenever they get around to it. Meanwhile, we've got all the kids crossing over there at that stop sign. People are trying to beat the traffic over there by going in the right lane, which is a right turn only lane. I think you all know where I'm talking about. And then as soon as they can, they cheat. They stomp on the gas and come up Sunny Slope at about 80 miles an hour to get in front of the guy in the left lane who is forced to go straight. So they try to make two lanes into one illegally there because they don't want to take the right turn. And that's all because there's a stop sign there, a three-way stop. It's a terrible corner. There's no question about it. It's mal-designed. The right-of-way is a problem. The street's too narrow. It's got all kinds of issues. The sidewalk's not there for the kids to walk on to go to school. That's another problem. Once they cross the street, there's no sidewalk on the other side. By the way, that's your problem, because the reason there's no sidewalk is it's county property, okay? So it needs a sidewalk as well as it needs everything else, and we ought to get that sidewalk in there before one of those kids gets hit by a car. And that's going to happen because all those kids are crossing over and walking on the gravel. And there's no sidewalks that are forced to walk halfway out in the road. And you're going to have it. So I'm glad you said let's not wait. If the gentleman helping to run the Resource Management Agency is sure they'll get it done this summer, then that's what that's acceptable. We should say, get it done this summer by date X, whatever date X is. I don't know what that right date is, but we shouldn't say, oh, we'll get it done a year from when we get notice. That's what the proposal originally was here, and that's not acceptable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Any other speaker cards? Anyone from the public?
Good morning, Board. I'm here today because my mother passed away almost 3 months ago, and I'm concerned with the labor camp 1530.
Excuse, sir. Does this has to do with the subject matter at hand?
No, I thought
I'm sorry,
I was
sir.
public speaking.
No, you can't
no?
talk about this.
I'm
sir.
sorry.
You had an opportunity at the public.
In the beginning.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I apologize, but
okay.
It has to be related to the subject matter.
Okay, I thought it was okay. My bad.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
That's all right. Anyone else from the public? Okay, I'll close it. Thank you. Supervisor Patello?
Yes, I appreciate Supervisor Munzer's suggestion as far as, of a compromise. But the way I see it is that, the Santana Ranch got a break on the traffic impact fees already. This is something that we agreed to in our development agreement. Are we going to start making deferrals and, amending our agreements? I don't think that's a good path to go down. And so I'm still at my position is to be oppose this item, and whatever is agreed as far as traffic mitigation should be done, and I'm not jeopardize safety for even 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Medina?
If they started today, how quickly would they be able to put up that traffic light?
My understanding is they're scheduled to have it constructed this summer. So 3 months, 4 months.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Munzer?
James, but they have reached the 140, is it the 145 building permits that this was supposed to start?
Yes.
So with the agreement in place now, we cannot issue any more building permits until this light goes in.
That's right. And again, that traffic signal requirement was based on the environmental and traffic analysis for this project and several other projects which haven't been built. So the cumulative traffic trips are less than what would have triggered the signal. But
Thank you. I'm not going to support. I want that being done. No more delays.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just move forward. You want to build in our community? We'll let you build, but you're going to have to pay out front, and so I'm ready for a vote if somebody wants to make a vote.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I know that we already had the public comment, but I was just wondering whether there was a representative of the developer here
Absolutely.
that could
I
address
will allow
the
that.
issue.
Anyone from the project?
Good evening. I'm Brian Curtis with Stone Creek Properties. The delay in the signal isn't a matter of money or timing or anything. We've probably been designing it and in plan check with the city for probably 2 years now. And the plans should be ready for signing, I would think, maybe a week away, maybe 2 weeks away. But the city of Hollister has told us that they won't let us construct a signal till school is out in the summertime because they want to close the lanes down. So the summer window for construction is based on the city's requirement for the school. It's not a construction time for the signal. So that's why we're kind of geared up to do it this summer.
Well, let me ask you a question then. You're at that number right now. That's the reason why you're here.
Yes.
Then for every additional house you want to build, put the equivalence of a dollar amount into an account. So when the summer comes available, when summer comes around, then those funds will be there, and then you can start doing the construction. Otherwise, I can't support anything else. I just can't. So that's an option for you to consider.
Okay. That's acceptable.
So you're willing to do it?
Yes.
Okay, so somehow we got to create an account that you start putting funds into that account today.
Okay.
All right, so that's an option for the board to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. Okay. Discussion, direction?
I'll make a motion to deny the deferral of the traffic signal installation at Valley View Road and Sunny Slope Road intersection for the Santana Ranch subdivision to the 300 building permit or 12 months Board of Supervisors decision, whatever comes first. I'm making a motion to deny that request.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
No. Supervisors? No, so it fails. Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I
yes.
try attempt a
Yes.
motion?
I'm sorry. I am going to approve that motion.
Okay.
Oh, you are approving.
Okay.
Oh.
It passes. Therefore, continue as is, and you got to start construction before you get the next permit. That's the directions of the board. Okay. You got that, Chase?
Sorry about that, Mr.
That's okay. Got it? Okay.
Mr. Chair, would you like us to work out an agreement with the developer and bring it back at a future meeting, perhaps?
For what?
Okay.
There's no need. It's 3-2 vote.
Okay.
Yeah, if they want it, another permit, they got to build that light. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Moving on. Okay, number 7 from the public. Who's?
Jack King.
Okay, thank you.
My bad handwriting is Jack Kirk. Sorry.
He's a king.
R's and N's look the same. Hey, first of all, I just want to thank the staff and thank the board for, especially Mr. Rivas and for Mark, for their working on the ad hoc committee on the marijuana issue. And I appreciate that. I appreciate Mr. Medina keeping the community informed through me and I appreciate that very much. And I respect you for that. I just have one question. So there's an item 7 of this. The memo came out, and there's 6 applicants that are being considered on May 23rd. So if of those 6, as I understand, there's about 30 grows going on, and there's about 27 or so applications. Does that mean the remaining 21 have not been accepted, and you're sending letters out to them telling them they're not accepted? Or does it mean that they will also be within, if you guys extend this for 180 days, that you'll now be considering those other 21 at some later date for the amortization?
We're scheduling them all before the Board of Supervisors on the May 23rd meeting at 1:30. So these are the only ones that had dates that were submitted earlier than the 180, that the 180 days may run before the next meeting in May. So they're all coming before the board in May.
Okay, so they're all coming forward. Mm-hmm. You'll be considering 27?
Yes. Yes.
27? Okay. Of the 27, though, what is special about these 6? These are the ones that have completed applications?
Actually, hold on a minute. Jack, can you present to the board your list of concerns, and then staff will address your list of concerns after you conclude your 3 minutes?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So that's the only question I had. I don't want to take any more of your time.
Okay.
I just want to know just some clarification about the number of applicants, who's going to be considered, and then what makes these 6. It's confusing in the memo. I thought perhaps you guys had already whittled it down to 6. So we'd just like to have that clarified in the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jack. Okay. County Council, you want to address?
Good morning, Board. Sarah Dickinson, WD County Council. So to address some of the concerns with regard to why we're asking for these 6 applicants to be extended, the board had set the date for hearing on these amortization applications for May 23rd. There's a handful of applicants that don't have a received by date stamped on the application. So we're looking at this signed date as a date to go by in an abundance of caution to move forward, the 180 days would expire prior to that May 23rd hearing. So all applications are being considered. A notice will be going out informing the applicants of the hearing date and any additional information that the county is requesting of them. So it is just these 6 that would otherwise have a time that expires prior to May 23rd. So I hope that clarifies the questions. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Marty Richmond from Hollister, just to make sure I have the numbers right. If it was, if it needs to be corrected, I'll leave and you can correct me. So it's 27. Is that the correct number? 27 applicants. Is that the correct number? Approximately 6 and 21. Approximately 27. So we have approximately 27 applicants in compliance, at least appears, with our what we put forward to date, which means anybody who's not one of those approximately 27 applicants are not in compliance. And so I would hope that the board realizes that we've had people come up here, and I don't know how accurate it is. We've all kinds of people who might know or might not know, who say there are hundreds of operations out there. Some people say there's 5. Some people say there's 100. I've heard 200. I've heard every number you can imagine. Whatever it is, the vast majority of the estimates from professionals and people who should know something about it, it's a heck of a lot bigger than 27, or approximately 27. I hope you intend to do something about it. If you don't intend to do something about it, why waste your time on an application? You're just wasting the money of the applicant's time, you're wasting your own time, and you're wasting the staff times, and you're wasting my time if the fact that people make an application doesn't count for something. So those people who made the application, whatever the number is, paid the fee, following the rules, deserve to have the benefit of what they did, which means the people who didn't do it, you have to take some action. And if you don't take some action, what are you doing? You're just collecting a fee for the heck of it, and you're just going to turn around and let everybody operate without a license, without an application, without enforcement, without anything. And you know why they're doing it. They either can't afford it, or they don't meet the requirements. They know they're not going to get an approval because they don't meet the requirements that you've laid out. So you need to take some action. At some point in time, there's 2 sides to this argument. One is, if you're going to insist that people get an application, pay $7,500 or whatever it is, then you've got to protect those people, because that's the rule you put in. If you don't protect those people, then there's no sense having an application process, and this is all a waste of time and a waste of their money and our time and our money and the staff's time and the public's money. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Anyone else from the public? None? Okay. I'll bring it back. Okay. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I need clarification from County Council. Why are these 6 people before us, these 6 applications before us?
So these 6 applicants had applications that would appear to have been potentially received prior to a date that would, 180 days from that date, be on the 23rd or after. So the 180 days, these people fall within a period of time that is between now and the 23rd
And you say they
of May.
appear, and that's because we didn't do something we were supposed to do?
There's no received by date, and so it is complicated
So
in
it's
that
something that
sense.
we did not do that we should have done?
There's more to it. So some of these applicants also submitted materials after the November 30th date, they submitted some materials in January or February to be part of their application. Arguably, these people would then actually have 180 days begin from the date that they submitted additional materials. But in an abundance of caution, staff is recommending that the board extend from 180 days from the date that the first application was received.
And where I'm going with this, we just, and everybody knows my feelings on out-of-town developers. I made that quite clear a few years ago. I won't repeat what I said at that meeting. But we just treated a out-of-town developer because we felt he didn't do what he was supposed to do in a timely manner. Now, are we asking for grace period because we didn't do what we were supposed to do?
No, I mean, basically, you could argue that the 180 days shouldn't run from the date that it was actually received by the county because basically there would normally be a period of time where you evaluate it, and a lot of these applications did submit two sets of documents, and so really it can't be deemed complete the very first date that it was submitted. It really should be deemed complete the very last date that they submitted a document. But instead of arguing about that and like having any sort of issues, this is really an abundance of caution just to continue these until so we can hear them all in May, and that there's no question that there's
so their original date.
Mm-hmm. This is runs.
The original application submission date would have already run out on the by 180 days before the May whatever.
Yes.
So we did not do what we were supposed to do in having this done in 180 days.
Some of these applications, they submitted documents as late as February. So it's not that there's really been 180 days since they've submitted their documents. This is really more to bring it forth to the board just to say that from their very earliest date, but they could not have been deemed complete when they were still submitting documents in January and February. So we're not within the 180 days from the last date that they submitted documents as part of their application process.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair?
Hold on. Supervisor Munzers?
I'm good for the.
You're good? Supervisor Rivas?
So I guess we can use the comparison of when Obamacare was approved and they had to roll it out and it was botched. Here we go. I mean, this is uncharted territory for not only us but a lot of other counties. And so certainly there's a lot of holes in this process, and we're here and we're trying to clean up as much as we can. Right. But certainly this wasn't a perfect process, but why these applicants were allowed to, turn in documents months after their application. I mean, that's something that we've got to clean up. That's something we're going to clean up moving forward. But certainly, I trust staff and, the fact that we're doing everything to cover the county and our local taxpayers. So, thank you.
Louis?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I think Supervisor Rivas hit it on the head. This is very much uncharted territory. If we back up and kind of recall or take into account the history of it, we were getting applications. We were in the middle of the ordinance being considered, drafted, implemented, and so forth. Since that time, staff has really come to realize how very important it is to centralize a process and track these a lot more closely, a lot more carefully, and with much greater detail. We're doing that. And I think you'll see, and I believe the feedback that you will probably get from the members of the ad hoc will show that we've taken into consideration that this process should be much more centralized, and we're working to do that. In this particular case, these particular 6 applications, I think council is on the right track. You're making provisions for a situation where these applications may not have been tracked as closely as they should have. We realize what the issue is, and so in order to mitigate any legal issues that might arise, that's why this approach was taken. But I can assure the board that we're going to be very, very cautious and careful as we move forward in tracking and processing and moving these applications forward and presenting them to the council or to the board and to the public.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Okay.
All right. Does the ad hoc committee want to share their thoughts? Supervisor Rivas?
No, I mean, I think, working on the committee, we certainly recognize that, we have to improve, upon our previous ordinance, and so that's why we're trying to schedule these hearings. And certainly, as Louis just stated, looking to centralize, the application process is something that you'll see in the draft ordinance in a couple weeks' time to make sure that we certainly, don't have these loopholes and, there's this, ability to eliminate these mistakes in the future.
Thank you. Supervisor Medina? Nothing? Okay. Anyone else in the public? I'll close it. Okay, what's the wishes of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval for staff recommendation, item number 7 on the consent calendar.
Sure, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against?
No.
Supervisor Patello?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to go with the aye.
Aye, okay.
I'm sorry.
Motion carries 4-1. Okay, next item is number 10. Supervisor Patello?
Yeah, thank you. Jim, I just have a real quick question on this, and you had another bylaw change, but I'm just focusing on number 10 and reading this through consent. On these changes, it's kind of hard to see what was changed without the kind of a line out and red incorporation and so. It says here the CAB shall have the duty and authority to administer CSBG and other public funds pending ratification of the Board of Supervisors, which means we still make the decision how those funds are being administered. But I thought they already had that authority to an extent. And what was changed in the bylaws? Because I can't wait. It's given to us. I don't know what was the point.
Let me ask Enrique to speak to that.
Pardon me? Oh, okay.
My apologies. We should be more prudent to give more specific information on any changes. So these bylaws, the Community Action Board made 3 revisions to the bylaws. The first one is to Article 5, section on meetings. Normally, the Community Action Board does not meet on 2 months. And the bylaws only had one of the months listed, so we added December. So the third line says the months of August and December, so that's one change to that section. And the other change is the following page under committees. The Community Action Board added the Committee of Executive and defined it. So the Executive Committee prior was not included in the bylaws, so that was included here with this new revision. And the third change is on the same section is adding the Strategic Planning Ad Hoc Committee. We had a strategic plan, and the board felt that a strategic planning committee was necessary to ensure that we stick to our goals and our mission. Those were the 3 changes. And again, my apologies for not being specific.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I looked this over too, and I was struggling to figure out what the changes are. So this executive committee is a newly created committee who will have apparently broad power in an act of emergency. Who or what constitutes an act of emergency?
So if there is an action that needs to be taken where the entire committee cannot meet, then the executive committee would meet on behalf of the board. And then the board would ratify it and be brought back here if there's action that needs to be taken to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay. Based on that, I cannot support this with that line in the bylaws.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
I said based on that, I cannot support that the act of emergency measure needs to be more clarified than that. I don't know if you want to bring it back to us.
Yeah, we want to have it. Yeah,
but that's a little too broad for
yeah, that'll probably be. Thank you, Supervisor Munzer. Yeah, Enrique, thank you for those explanations. I think in the future, whenever there's changes, like especially like the bylaws or some type of documents, do a redlining so then we can follow, see what the changes are. So we don't ask these questions the way they are right now. We can either approve it or deny it right there and then. Is it okay with the board that we hold this to the next meeting until Enrique defines whether emergency? Is that okay with the board? Yeah.
Do you need that in a form or motion?
I don't think so.
You have to do public.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. Yeah. Let me open it to public comment, then we'll continue this discussion. Anyone from the public? None? Okay. Bring it back? Okay. Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll move to continue this item to May, what's the next day? May 9th? May 9th. 2017.
Okay. Thank you. Is
I'll
there a
second that.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next item. Number 18, Supervisor Patella.
Yes, thank you. I'm a little bit concerned about this item with the continued amendments, even before we even got started with the project here. And I just don't understand why we're going through this. I know this is an architect, and we're going to discuss a little bit later the jail project as far as direction to the staff as far as a construction management firm. But why are we still kind of incurring costs for changes on a project that we haven't even started? And this is the third amendment. So are these mistakes that HMC themselves made, and then they're going to the bank on us here, like pigs to a trough at the feeding time? And, I just don't see why we would continuously approve amendments on changes that they bid in good faith, and we accepted their bid in good faith, and we're on our third contract amendment.
Thank you. First of all, consultant contracts aren't a bid. It's a proposal, right, for estimated effort, level of effort for work done. This project is 3 years behind. That time costs money on many fronts. We have asked them to do extra work, to do extra cost estimates, to make some changes to the drawings, to try to help with the overall construction costs. We have had them do quite a bit of extra work over that time to help get us in a better position for bidding and construction. So,
I don't recall approving, being part of this board, approving extra work, and then, and I don't recall expanding the jail by 5,000 or 6,000 feet that that ended up happening. And this is how costs get away, is just kind of blindly approving amendments to architects and people that before you even get started with the project. And it was not an estimate. It was not to exceed number when we approved the original contract. And, I could see a little bit, if we're all clear as far as what the increased costs are. I don't see anything in the staff report that provides hours by what type of architect for what type of work. All I see is just an amendment to the contract. And here's another check, Mr. Architect. And I'm not support that. I'm not going to support it until we get going with the project. And what they bid is what they bid. There's not a shovel of dirt that's been turned yet. And it's time that we play a little bit of hardball.
If I may, sir, the delays that we have is not the fault of this consultant. Okay, they are a victim in this, just like the whole project is, and like we are. Okay, there are a lot of different market forces that have caused these delays that we've talked about before. They have had to do additional work for that. The hiring of the Vanner construction management firm has created additional work that was not in the original contract or in their proposal. It is work that was required as a part of those efforts. It has been very valuable. It has helped us manage the overall construction, estimate costs. So, I appreciate your concerns, but these are obviously things that I look for before I even bring something to you. I would not bring you something that was just, handing out extra money. These are valid costs that they have incurred additionally to the original scope that we had approved for them at our request and due to other issues that have happened, over time with these extra services, with the extra delays, which were not their fault.
Yeah, and one last question before I just turn it over, Mr. Chairman, thank you, is, so this is $39,000? Yeah,
Yep.
$40,000 for sake of argument. How do you receive the expenditures as far as a breakdown as far as costs to hours worked to the end product?
Well, pretty much just like that. There is an hourly breakdown. The main fee is broken down by phase of work, right? So this is more for the bid phase activities, okay? So the amendment does have the additional hours that they have prepared or incurred or estimate to incur. And when the bill comes in, I check everything against that. They have everything broken down, and we're able to corroborate all of their requests.
Well, this went way over what we thought it would cost when we entered into this contract, and at some point, we really have to lay down the law. We talked about this at other meetings that we're $5 million beyond where we need to be, and I just see this. If this is be too easy to come by, everybody is be at the trough.
No,
I kind of want to say no. I'm going to say no to this extension, but
I understand. But let me remind you that we, as we'll hear in the next update on this item today, we're very, very close to construction. So bid phase, construction documents, all that stuff is at an end. There's not any more time. I mean, we're gonna either do the project or we're not. So it's not going to drag on any longer and have any more potential for increases to consultant costs like that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, let me open up to the public. Anyone from the public? None? Bring it back. What are the wishes of the board?
Well, I'm going to take a crack at it. I'm going to just say move for denial of amendment number 3 to HMC Architects, so that on the basis that they should have gave a more accurate bid on their second amendment.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against?
No.
No. Motion carries. 3-2.
I'm 2 for 2.
Wow, Anthony.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay. Now we go to regular public hearing 21. Resource Management Agency to be heard at around 9 or thereafter, as many can be heard. Actually, you know what? We will take a 5-minute break.
They were talking in there. They put like 4 different items in.
Yeah, I didn't hear it
They
either.
did pull.
Okay, mic's on, guys. I think we're going to be working through lunch. Any objections to working through lunch? We'll go to lunch. We're going to go to lunch.
Well, we also have.
I have a commitment.
We got it. I got it. I can see Jerry already. We'll go.
Actually, I just want, I'm okay.
No, we will go to lunch. All right. Shirley? Or James? Jim's really? Perfect.
Volume.
Oh, I think you have to turn that on.
Yeah, volume.
All right.
Chase, give him 3 minutes, please.
All right, thank you. So this item is a development agreement and an amendment to the environmental impact report for a residential subdivision that was approved in 2016 for the Sunnyside Estates homes. It was a 200-lot subdivision. After the subdivision was approved, there was a request received by the county to enter into this development agreement that would guarantee certain development rights for a period of 15 years. The Planning Commission reviewed the EIR amendment and the development agreement at their meeting in March of this year and recommended approval of it. This clearly predates me, so I don't have a lot of the history behind it. But that is what the proposal is at this point, and County Council has worked with the property owners on the development agreement and can answer probably more specific questions, but that's essentially what's in front of the board.
Okay, thank you.
And Honorable Board, Shirley Murphy, Deputy County Counsel. We have our outside special counsel, Nadia Costa from Miller Star Regalia, who assisted in drafting the DA and assisted with the EIR addendum. Oh, sorry. And assisted with the EIR addendum. So without further ado, I'll pass the mic on to Nadia.
All right. Okay, Nadia, it's on your corner.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we're good.
Great. All right. As James mentioned, this development agreement is coming in a little bit of an unusual context since it's following the main project entitlements. But to be clear, the main purpose of this, it was requested by the applicant. County Council and RMA staff worked with the applicant to basically memorialize the terms of the project that has already been approved by both the Planning Commission and the board, and to also clarify certain conditions that we felt would be beneficial for everyone. So even though it's coming a little bit late in the process, we do think there are some benefits. First, I think probably of most importance to both the applicant and the county, it does provide an additional degree of certainty for both parties as compared to what would probably happen just under a vesting map. Second, it also helps to clarify the language of certain conditions which we think are going to help effectively implement those conditions and avoid problems in the future. And finally, it does provide a stronger enforcement mechanism through various default provisions as compared to what would happen under traditional conditions. There are also some substantive enhancements that the applicant came to and agreed with the county in its request to do so. I think specifically we can focus on affordable housing. As the board recalls, when the project was originally approved, there was no mandatory inclusionary requirement, and the applicant did voluntarily agree to an in lieu per unit fee. Based on how the DA now reads, we have confirmed that the entire $900,000 originally contemplated will occur regardless of whether the project will ultimately be built out. So that's one enhancement.
Hold on a minute.
Yes,
how much in lieu for
So we had a total, there was an in lieu fee, and in total, if the project were built out entirely, it would equate to $900,000. However, the way the conditions read initially, because it was per unit, to the extent that the project was only half built out, the county only got half of that money. The revision, the language of the DA has since been revised to clarify that they have to pay the entire $900,000 within a 5-year period from the issuance of the first building permit.
Now, compare that $900,000 right now to the new low-income housing that we're trying to approve, or we do have approved, how much dollar difference is that?
I'd have to defer to RMA staff or county council in that regard.
It's got to be over $1 million, I imagine. And I guess we don't have an answer to that, right?
I can tell you right now, I don't have the answer, and I don't think legal staff does. We can come back and get that answer for you later.
I understand that you can't compare it to this project because of the timing issue. I understand that. And I think it's more of a point to my fellow supervisors, to the board, is that we need to move on those impact fees and those projects. And Supervisor Botello?
Yeah, I know that was kind of a sore point for me on with this project, is because there's no accommodations for the affordable aspect, and I think staff worked very hard with the developer to try to reach some sort of consensus, and they did come a long ways very late in the project to this point, and we're this, even though the project is vested for 15 years, and I do share the same kind of concerns that hopefully we're not locking in impact fees and development fees for at today's costs and building it out 10 years from now at a different cost altogether. Those fees and should be adjusted over a period of time, and I know we're getting very close with the impact fees, and we'll have that to the board very shortly, and that needs to be CPI'd to make sure we stay more or less up to date.
Does it have a CPI mechanism trigger in the development agreement?
I'm sorry? I didn't hear the question, Chairman.
Does the development agreement have a trigger mechanism in which it'll adjust for the new costs?
Associated with all other impact fees?
Yes.
Or just, yes. So what we've done here, and I wanted to clarify that point, the affordable housing fee is basically vested via this DA because it was initially a voluntary payment since the county did not have that in place. However, this reaffirms that they are not vesting into any other impact fees. So they will pay whatever impact fee is in place at the time of building issuance.
Okay.
The only other couple of items I was going to briefly mention, if it pleases the board, is I wanted to clarify there is some additional funding that the applicant has agreed to contribute to certain off-site traffic impacts located at Airline and Union Road. There's basically less of a credit than was originally envisioned, and they're also going to pay $1,000 per unit fee in connection with these off-site improvements that they weren't otherwise required to do. Finally, I think it is helpful that the condition that was originally imposed on the project has been further clarified to help ensure that the revenue neutrality provisions that have become very important to the county are effectively implemented. So we clarified the language in that regard. I think that's it, unless there are any questions.
Yes, Supervisor Munzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So looking over this, I did see that this will be a CFD and not a CSA.
Yes.
And I very much appreciate that. What I didn't see, and I apologize if I missed it, is there a requirement for a homeowner association?
I believe we do have certain conditions that are not reflected in. So to step back for the moment, the DA does not replace all of the conditions. We have clarified that they are vested into the applicable conditions as they apply to the project, except as they've been modified by the development agreement. And so I believe there are certain conditions attached to the map still that reflect the need for an HOA to deal with whatever private improvements are on site.
Okay, because this has become very important for me. Every subdivision needs to have a HOA that is in place and does not go away when the last house is built, but it is in place to service the residents and that they have a voice in their community.
Agreed. And we work hard with County Council to help ensure that those conditions also reflect not only the need to have the HOA, but in the CCNRs themselves, any of the provisions that directly benefit the county cannot be amended without the county's prior written consent. So the future HOA can't basically undo what the county has done.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
So
Chair.
in 5 years or 10 years, when that, it's going to be a public road or private road? It's going to be dedicated to the county, the roads?
For all the roads? And the applicant is also here to the extent you have site planning questions as
He's
well.
saying yes, it will be dedicated to- So that means the public can ride through them, and they're not going to put a gate to block those roads, right? That's
I
my
do
understanding.
not believe that a gate has been planned.
I'm saying that because Supervisor Medina might ask that question. So, no gate on that project. Can we put that in writing?
I was going to say the record reflects the applicant confirming there's no gate at the project.
No, we need it in writing, actually.
Do we want to?
We want it in writing.
We can certainly, if the County Council, how would you like to document that in the ordinance
It's a tough
itself,
day
or
today.
amending the?
Learning from Anthony.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Sure.
Barbara, a lot of these developments that my understanding is the roads are offered, but the county does not accept them. So it becomes ambiguous whether they're private or public. Once the roads are offered and we accept them, then they're public, and that would take away the issue of the gate altogether, because they cannot have a gate on a public road. So can we make sure that once the roads are offered, we accept them?
I'm not sure that we want to have that as a blanket rule.
For this particular, not as a blanket rule, but for this particular development, can we sit there and say we will definitely accept the roads?
Was there any plan to accept these roads?
That's what Shirley and I were just discussing. I had understood that although the developer is always required to offer, it was not my understanding that the county was going to actually accept that offer of dedication, although the applicant.
Well, can we have the applicant up here, Mr. Brigantino?
So the final map has not come forward for approval yet, and usually that decision is made by the board at the time the final map is approved, whether to accept or not accept the offer of dedication. Under the Subdivision Map Act, even if the board rejects the offer of dedication at the approval of the final map, you always have the ability to rescind that decision and accept them later if you decide that's your desire. At the time.
We are in a gate. What's that phrase? What's it? Watergate? We're in the county gate, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what the phrase is.
It's going to come to the board at a future meeting, but we were contemplating bringing forth an ordinance at a future meeting for the board to consider a policy regarding gates on within the county. So that is a pending issue that's going to be coming to the board at some point for at least your consideration.
Okay. So this project will be subject to that then?
It wouldn't be retroactive. So this that ordinance would be prospective. So
we got to talk about it right now then.
Let's get it right.
Huh?
Let's get it right the first time.
Yeah. Just, whatever letter you have last used, put that extra letter and then put that language right there.
Yeah. Yeah, we could include that, I guess, as the motion today.
Well, yeah, I mean, the ordinance purporting to approve the DA does have a section for conditions. We could add.
You can say something, if the roads are dedicated to the county, then there will be no gates forever.
Well, at least during the term of the.
You put the if, so then there's opportunity not to dedicate it. Mr. Brigantino?
They are going to be dedicated to the county.
Yeah, but I guess you haven't driven around the county. There's some gated areas.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, can I throw something out?
Sure.
So when what did you final map? Is that the term you used?
Yes.
When the final map comes before us, can you highlight in red, bold, italicized, whatever, so that we see it, the offer of the roads, so that we make sure that we accept them?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that you would perhaps want to direct your staff that when they bring the final map forward for approval, that they bring it forward with a recommendation.
I thought you were part of our staff.
Well, I'm counsel, but that when you bring it forward when they bring it forward to you with a recommendation to approve it, that the recommendation include accepting the offer of dedication rather than rejecting.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Supervisor Botello?
Yeah, and so the CFD has taken into account the cost to maintain the roads.
So how the CFD will be structured right now, we have a provision that's very broad that basically says when they come forward to form the CFD, the applicant pays for a consultant to be retained by the county, and that consultant's job will be to identify all of the various improvements and services that are appropriately covered by the CFD, which obviously will include roads to the extent that those become public. And then that CFD special tax will need to accommodate. So there is a DA provision that requires the CFD to contemplate all of those improvements and services.
Yeah, because that's part of the problem we have is that on some of these smaller neighborhood roads, if they're dedicated to the county, we got to go in and fix them.
Yep.
And but we don't have the money to fix them. And whereas if they're not dedicated to the county, it's the homeowners association that does it. And I don't know which way is the better way, but we need to understand this up front. So Supervisor Munzer, 10 years, 12 years from now, has to fix the road.
So the process for county, we're getting a little bit afield, but the process for accepting roads and the maintenance obligations for those, it's kind of a two-step process. After accepting the offer of dedication, then the board has another discretionary decision to make, which is to adopt a resolution accepting them into the system of county-maintained roads. Until the second step happens, the county is not responsible for maintaining the roads.
Okay, thank you. Ray?
I was just going to say I'd like to hear what Larry has to say here, but I was just going to caution the board that we probably would want to do more homework before we accept or a road, something that's different. I would like to know and understand the caveats with that. I think the dilemma right now at the board is the gates. I think that's something we can write in somewhere to address that issue without going outside our normal process. I think it's really important we understand it could be a significant change, significant cost down the road, which I just want to make sure that we understand that before we make any changes of our normal policy or normal action items. But that's kind of what I wanted to recommend. But Larry's here. He has an item, I think, something that pertains to this too as well.
Well, just members of the board, listening to members of the board, just in listening to the discussion, I was going to say what County Council just said about the two-step process, but you still could not accept or reject the offer of dedication at the time the map is being approved, which I think for this one is what I would probably recommend. And then you can wait until the roads are actually constructed and the improvements are in, and we can be assured that they were constructed properly and meet our standards. And then if you want to accept them at that time, you can, and into the county maintained road system. But I think the bigger issue, and it's tough with some of these subdivisions that are sort of been in the pipeline for a while, but I think going forward, there really should be a discussion with each of these projects about whether these roads and the improvements with individual subdivisions are improvements that the county wants to accept responsibility for, or whether they should be maintained privately by each development through some mechanism as a homeowners association or a CSD or a CSA or something like that. But I think the conversation about how many roads should be accepted into the county maintained system when we're having extreme difficulty just maintaining what we currently have, I think begs the question that we want to be careful about accepting more responsibility for maintenance. I guess the way I would put it is we don't need more mouths to feed, and this is something I think we want to be careful about.
No, actually, I think we're all on the same page. I think every development that comes from the county should support and maintain itself, and the county shouldn't be repairing those roads if it's a project like this. There should be a funding mechanism in which that project pays for all the repairs and improvements and street lights and all the other good stuff.
Yeah. There might be, in some subdivisions, there might be some roads that, there might be some improvements being made to a road that is essentially a public road, and there may be widening the road or doing some improvements to what is already a public road. And we would want to have a limited acceptance of maybe that, but the internal roads that just serve the subdivision, I think, is another issue that should be considered with each project.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and one of the things that this item has come up, and multiple items have come up concerning CFDs, HOAs, CSAs. And so I've asked County Council to work with Nadia, I believe she's going to come next week, to give a presentation to your board about all the different options that the board has for future development. And then to tie these types of things, that we don't adhere more cost or more liability for some of these projects that may go south for some reason, whether there's no water in an area or there's some other issues. So I think it was really advantageous for us to kind of stop what we're doing, really get an understanding of the different options that the board has and which ones, there may be some good reasons why to even do a CSA. I think that Nadia is going to talk a little bit about it, at least have the board have some understanding with that, and the reasons why maybe a certain development may fall under that. But that was, I think it was really important. So I know that they've been working on it. We've been trying to get it on the agenda, and I believe next meeting it's scheduled. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that.
Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think our poor applicant has gotten caught in the middle of a bigger battle. But what I want to say is Supervisor Bertello brought up the deal about once a homeowner association takes over the maintenance of a road within the development, then they take on ownership. Whether it's legitimate or not, they feel they own the roads, and that's what's been some of our issues of late. And I don't remember if it was James or Larry brought up the fact that, we don't want to accept the road either into our system that's not built yet. So the accepting of the road needs to be timed right. But I think what we need to do is there seems to be ambiguous about what roads we own and what roads we don't own. And then we get into situations with our CSAs and our HOAs about who owns the roads, whether they can put gates on them or not, who can come through and use the roads. And then we need to have the broader discussion, like our CAO said, and get that clarified. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, okay. I think we need to put that to rest. You're right. We'll talk about it at another meeting. No more gates issues?
Make a motion.
All right. You're done with your report, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let me open up to the public. Anyone from the public?
It's me again, Marty Richmond from Hollister. I want to go back to the earliest part of this discussion about the $900,000 for more affordable housing. I don't call it affordable housing because there's no such thing as California. We'll call it more affordable. I don't know what the developer's plans are. I don't know if they plan on building out right away or they plan on waiting 10 years or they plan on watching the market. But if it turns out to be 10 years, that $900,000 is not going to be worth much. Because forget about the CPI, just look at house prices. If house prices go up 5% a year, you get a 5% annual rolling increase in 10 years, what's your $900,000 going to buy in the way of affordable housing? Nothing. So there's a couple ways to do this, and I'm not here to try and take money out of anybody's pocket. I'm just saying you either got to hook that to something having to do with the cost of housing, or you got to hook that to something having to do with the inflation index, or you have to get the money up front and start supplying the affordable housing based on today's prices. After all, it's not going to be in that development because they're going to pay an in-lieu fee. So obviously, it's not going to be built there anyway. You wouldn't probably, if those houses are very expensive, and I have no idea what the plan is. Again, I'm not throwing any rocks at anybody because I haven't even looked at it. But if they're going to be a lot of money, you wouldn't be able to put it there because you'd wind up with one unit. And if the HOA and the CFDs wind up to be a lot of money, it might not be affordable anyway, even if you could buy the unit because you have a monthly payment and plus an annual payment. So what I recommend is you work something out to get the money over a short period of time so you can supply affordable housing. Apparently, they've agreed to pay for it whether they build out or not. So trying to work out so you get the affordable housing money over a short period of time so you can supply affordable housing somewhere in the county, even prior to the build-out, and get some value for your money. If the houses double in price, by the time you wind up with the cash and there's no incentive and there's nothing to change the cash flow, you're not going to be able to buy anything. So I appreciate your time. Again, this is not trying to pick anybody's pocket. It's just being practical and understanding why we often wind up with the cash and don't wind up with any housing. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Anyone else in the public? Okay. Mr. Brigantino, you want to respond to that comment?
Yeah, John Brigantino, the applicant. When I started the project, there was no affordable housing. I asked the county, do you want affordable housing? They outright told me no. I went through, 3 years, spent a lot of money. 2 days before my tentative map, I was approached to give affordable housing. This is a donation. This is not, you had no affordable housing in place. My application was done. My project was done. This was a donation. I also donated another $100,000 towards the park. And the reason I want this development agreement is because I didn't have time before. It was 2 days before my meeting. I didn't have time to say, let's put it in a development agreement. I said, let's do it after. So I gave the money. I started at $200,000, and they came to give me $500. No, now give me $900. Okay, here's $900. Let's just get the thing done. I'm tired of going through all this for all these years. And so I gave that up. And then to get this development agreement, which was just supposed to be, let's put the conditions of approval in there and do a development agreement, they hit me up for another $300,000 for the road. Okay, I don't care. I live here. If that's what everybody wants, we're happy to do it. We have no problems with that. But enough is enough. I'm not going to do anything further. If there's a gate that someone, if it's a private road, there could be a gate. If it's a public road, there's no gates. That's the rules. So I'm going to follow the rules like I followed them all through this whole thing. When they asked for, the revenue neutrality, I didn't set any fees, and I never asked to set fees. I said, I'll pay the fees at the time we put in a house. Whatever the fees are, we'll pay it. I never said, give me fees set today. I'm not here just to, rip anybody off. I just want to do what was fair. I didn't ask for anything. The only thing I asked for was the time, because there's other issues going on that have already delayed me for a year that I'm not going to get into, but are not my fault either. So I wanted the time, and that's all I wanted. And so I gave you guys everything you wanted. Now I just ask you to approve this development agreement as it is.
Thank you, Mr. Brigantino.
Thank you.
Any questions? None? Thank you. Okay. So we had discussion. Any further questions to staff?
Yeah, I certainly want to thank the applicant. I know it's not easy. As a lifelong resident, I myself have been critical of all these new rooftops that are coming to San Benito. I know the Brigantinos, I went to school with half of them, and so I appreciate, the comments, although I may not agree with them. But, I know it's not easy. I'm not a developer. I know it's not easy to be one because, they're the face of a lot of the criticism that's out there, lack of infrastructure, new housing. But the bottom line is it's never going to be enough, right? Whether it's 200,000, whether it's 900,000, whether we had 5 million for affordable, it's never going to be enough. The fact is we live in California, and we have a housing crisis. And in particular, we have an affordable housing crisis. Is $900,000 enough? No, it's not. It's a drop in the bucket. For we've only had a few, some projects come before this board. I think the time that I've been a supervisor with Mr. Munzer, we've voted on maybe two projects. And certainly no development is ever perfect. The one I thought that was close to being perfect was Dow Webb, and look what happened to that. Blew up. But certainly no development is ever perfect. And, I recognize that. But certainly as a board, we certainly can do more to improve, the housing situation here, especially the affordable housing. Because when we talk about affordable housing, it's not just a low-income problem. It's a moderate income problem. We need housing for teachers and for firefighters and for, the most vulnerable, the populations here. And so certainly when I look at this project, it's not a perfect project, but I hope moving forward that we can engage our developers, we can work with our staff, we can improve our ordinances to hopefully get, get some meaningful projects moving forward that will address the housing crisis here and will address the lack of affordability when we talk about new houses into the future. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. But I'd like to thank the applicant too, and I guess low income to me is very passionate. Living on the west side of Hollister, just we need more apartments up. I mean, I'm telling you, I did a lottery pick for Chispa not too long ago, and there were like 1,300 families applying for just 36 apartments. That's embarrassing. But you're right. Supervisor Rios, 900,000 is it's drop in the bucket. But you were not part of that new low-income affordable that we have in place today, and I just want to tell the public right now that we're going to be stingy on that. And anybody who wants to come into San Benito County, want to develop, you guys got the money to develop, and we have a lot of issues. You were part of the prior thing. My main concern is that you're willing to pay the impact fees that are going at the time you're asking for the permits. That's a big stick for me, big one. And so I'm okay. Let's move forward. The roads, the gates, that stuff, we can figure them out later. But the public really does not like housing today. They don't. Just look at Facebook, look anywhere. Everybody says it. No more housing. In fact, I was just looking at John's Facebook, and there's somebody who's just saying bad things about the board. And I said, wow, jeez, wow. But I'm ready to move on. What's the pleasure? Supervisor Botello.
Yeah, we talked about just a handful of things within the presentation, and Mr. Brigantino at the 11th hour was describing the project to my planning commissioner, and I went in and kind of discovered that there was really no affordable provision, and that's where I think this got this ball rolling. And to his credit, he addressed it and made me feel a whole lot better about moving forward with this project. Of course, affordable housing, low-income housing is a priority for this county, but at the time when this project was going through the process, they were going through the process of the rules that we had in place at that time, and that's it. And this is the end product. He stepped forward. There's a park involved in this development. It's not a real big development, but there's a park there, and a much-needed park that I think is bode well for the future as the county moves forward with the river trail and the network of parks that we hope to have. And given we always have to make strides to make our process address the needs of today, and I think we're doing that. But I'm very supportive of the efforts that the Planning Commission staff and the developer made to get to this point. And it is a hard process. It's time consuming, and as earlier today. I kind of voted and with Santana Ranch made a development agreement. Stick to the development agreement. That's what it is, and that's what they agreed on. And we're doing the same thing here. And hopefully we don't have any problems in the future. But I'm going to support this today and move on.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move for staff recommendation.
Adopt resolution number 2017, Chase?
46.
And adopt ordinance number?
950.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, thank you. Move 22.
CSA number 31 is before the board today for another water conservation ordinance. Despite the higher rainfall this year, CSA 31 still has dependent upon water received from the blue valve allocations, and also it has a domestic well for domestic water use. The allocations that it received this year, they've in conjunction with the Homeowners Association of CSA 31, they've taken the allocation that they received from the blue valve water. They've reserved 7.2% of it for emergencies that can be used in case they need to augment their domestic well production to provide waters in the event of problems with the domestic well, and to reserve as a reserve for fire depressant and in the event of a leakage or pipe breakage. And then they've allocated how much each parcel should receive of the remaining water, which is set forth in Exhibit C of the ordinance, and that ensures that all parcels will have a fair and equitable source of water, and to ensure that the water lasts through the complete water year. So I'd like to read the title of the ordinance for the record, which is an ordinance of the County of San Benito establishing a water conservation program for the area served by County Service Area number 31 for the 2017-2018 water year. I ask the board to open the public hearing and then make the motion set forth on in the staff report.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone from the public? Okay. Do I close the public hearing?
Yes.
Close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move to adopt staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to regular agenda. Number 23.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this item actually came from your board. Actually, in particular, Supervisor Rivas had requested this item a few meetings back and asked to have our probation office give a presentation concerning gangs. So we have Al DeVos.
He just stepped out.
You stepped out. Okay, so we have Ted Barand, our chief probation officer, here that can open up the comments. We just had him here a second ago. I don't know where he went to.
He's in the bathroom.
Oh, okay. But anyways, I'll go ahead and have Ted open it up, and then he can talk a little bit, and then after that we'll have Alan here.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Ted Barand, Chief Probation Officer, County of San Benito. I would like to bring in and introduce Al DeVos. He is the County Gang Prevention Coordinator. He's been working with this function here in the county for a number of years, and he has a level of expertise locally here that I honestly don't have. So with that, Mr. DeVos.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, CIO staff. It's my pleasure to be here and present a little bit on what the work of the Gang Prevention Policy Committee is, some trends that we have that reflect gang activity, and just talk about a little bit about some of the things that overlap with the decisions that everyone's making at this time. Hey, Chase, can you help me get this to a full screen, please? All right. So the policy committee, just to remind everybody, is collaborative partnership between the Office of Education, Hollister School District, and the City of Hollister and the county. And the real, let me find my button here. The real thing to look at for me on this slide is the vision. And we have a vision for the county that youth are safe, they're connected to their families, and they're connected to their schools. So our real vision, or if you want to look at our work, it's really about how do we make youth and families successful, because that overlaps not just with gangs, but with crimes and real estate values and property values. And it's not just an easy solution, it's a very broad solution. And our mission is really working at the policy level to reduce crime and gang activity. And the decisions from the group, we're really looking at guiding principles. It's important to hold people accountable. It's also important to have strong systems, and that means health and human services, behavioral health services, education systems, and how they're all networked to support families. And the big one is investing in youth. So I'm happy to hear decisions about putting in traffic lights for safety, because those things matter. Also, connectedness and connections. So it's really, how do we keep community members connected, not just to their community, but to other community members and to the youth and to their governments, and also local solutions. And that's kind of the direction the state's been moving for a long time, and that's the direction that we'd like to promote. Is we have the capacity and resources here to address a lot of our problems, and a lot of our solutions come from within our community members and our local governments. So with that background on the policy committee, there are a few data points I'd like to hit, and this data is from the California Healthy Kids Survey, and it's administered every 2 years to different cohorts of students. So you have 11th grade students, you have 9th grade students, you have, for schools that administer it, you have 7th grade, and then I believe it's 5th grade, and the questions are different. And one of the questions in this survey asks students, do you consider yourself to be a member of a gang? And so this information, or this data here, is from San Benito High School, because currently they're one of the schools that does administer this survey. And the red line is for male participation, and the green line is female participation. And based on self-admission, you'll see that there's usually about 6 or 7% more male participation than female. And the blue line shows the trend in general. And so in 2009, when we started compiling this data, the trend has been a decrease in this group of students, or this cohort, from 2009 until this time here when they took the survey in 11th grade. So there's been decreasing gang participation. When we look at it for 9th grade students, we see that there's been a decrease from 2009 till about 2013 and 14. And then in the last couple year survey, there's been an increase of roughly about 6% of the males, and it's similar for the females. And so there are different factors that factor into that. We can't say exactly what it is, but just in that group at that time, that's the number of youth that are self-admitting to a gang. Things that can influence that are attitudes in the community about gang membership, efforts around gang membership. Maybe there's some charismatic individuals. Maybe there are individuals from out of town that are doing a lot of work in recruiting and schooling. There could be a lot of factors to that. So this is just the trend that we're seeing in that age group. Typically, we also see that gang membership as a whole tends to decline. A lot of times it'll reach its peak if you look at it across the state around 8th grade, and by the time somebody's in 11th grade, there's a lot lower number of people that are participating in gangs. There are some that do continue on into adulthood. This is for the 9th grade cohort. Some of this information I want to highlight here to changes to discuss. These are arrest statistics from our county jail. And this is statistics on the primary offense that somebody's booked into the jail for. And we have data from 2009 when we started collecting and compiling this up through 2016. And I just want to highlight a couple of trends that are significant, I think, in this group. And this is presented as a percentage of all of the arrests. So the gang members presented as a percentage of total arrests here. So if we look at this, the trend has been that we've had an increase in drug possession and contributing to the delinquency of minor with drugs from 2010 up till now. And I think that's reflected not only in arrests, but what we hear in our discussions with schools, what they're seeing, and with law enforcement. And what's significant about this is that some of our laws have changed to where some drug offenses aren't going to be as arrestable as they would otherwise be. So the trend of drug use or possession probably isn't truly reflected in this because certain things aren't really arrestable offenses. For the next slide, I think there's a pass out. There's handouts in the back. And this one is really a number of gang members arrested for firearms and weapons by year. So this is an addendum. I apologize. The other previous slide got duplicated in there, and this one's not in the presentation. But what you'll see here is that we have had also an increase in arrests of gang members for firearms and weapons violations. But that's not just gang members, that's as a percentage of the entire public. So we've had a similar arrest from members of or increase in arrests for the members of the public. So that's the other thing. These trends that we're seeing oftentimes are going to mirror the arrest trends that we see in the rest of the public. And I think our next slide will show a little bit more of just what sort of activities or crimes that we're seeing gang members participating in or being arrested for. Probation and parole violations, and this is a percentage of all arrests. That's the highest. The next one is vandalism, and that's a very common type of crime for gang members, whether it's graffiti or destroying property, not just here, but across the state. Burglary, robbery, stolen property, and theft is another common one. And looking into resisting arrest and trespass crimes also. So hanging out in front of stores or parks or loitering and other things where there may be trespass. And then the crimes percentages decrease from there. So we do have gang member participation in a whole host of variety of crimes. And what we're seeing is higher percentage in crimes that are typical to gang members overall. So the policy directions, like how do we address this with youth staying out of gangs and preventing them from being in gangs, but also intervention services and suppression? With the policy committee, one of our directions is really working on strengthening family practices across the system. So helping families connect better with themselves, be resources with each other, right? So when we talk about solving, we have solutions here for problems on our own in our community. One of the family strengthening tenets is that families have the skills and abilities in themselves or as groups to resolve a lot of the issues they have if the agencies that serve them help them develop those skills and provide that. So that's a way where we're not having to provide so many direct services, but really by adopting practices for agencies that serve families that really build up the family capacity. School engagement and literacy, those are key parts of helping youth grow up so that they're going to be successful in life. And so right now there are a lot of efforts at the school level and some grants that we're working on related to Prop 47 that are due in a couple of weeks. They're really around these factors. How do we engage school? The Department of Ed and our local schools are really working about how do we make our teachers more engaging to the students. So when they come in, they feel like they have an adult there that's working with them. How do we make the curriculum so it's not just learning to a state standard, but it's something that they're passionate about and they want to be there. So truancy and absenteeism, reducing that's important. Expanding low to no barrier opportunities for youth. So how do we make it so that youth have fun things, powerful things to do, but they all have access to it, right? It's tricky here. We're a sports town. We have a lot of pay-to-play sports leagues, but if you didn't start playing in them when you're in 6 years old or 7-year-olds, by the time you're up to 12 or 13, it's so competitive in so few spots, you have no outlet for it. So how can we create opportunities like that, whether it's in dance and drama or activities? And then also working on expanding and improving reentry programs and intervention service. And there's quite a bit going on in the probation department and with the community corrections partnership right around this area. So we're going to see improvement in services provided there. So some of the direct things that we're doing, activities, and this isn't all-inclusive, but these are ones to highlight, is we've been very successful with the gang resistance education and training programs at our elementary schools. We have trained school resource officers working with 3rd to 8th graders, and it's really life skills building. There's a little discussion about what is bad with being a part of gangs and what can happen to you, but there's a lot of discussions about how do you make good decisions. Actually, it's how do you make great decisions. How do you know if something's right? How do you handle a situation if there's bullying involved? So that's been very successful. We have excellent survey results from kids that not only do they like it, and it's one of their highlights of the week, but also that they realize after this class, they say, I'm less likely to be angry with somebody in my family. I handle things more positively. So a lot of it's just helping them to build social skills and ways to cope. School resource officer development. it's been a long process to really get to where we have school resource officers across several sites that are all on the same page and working together and cross-collaborating. Speaking of collaboration, we have efforts on around literacy collaborative building, because literacy is directly tied to not just rates of criminality, it is, but it's also just income. And it ties in with your real estate markets, and it ties in with all sorts of revenues for the cities and domestic violence and all sorts of areas. It's important, starting with the youth young and giving them that ability and that opportunity to improve their literacy. We do community outreach and information, building networks and resources. Those are things like giving trainings to agencies on quality standards for family strengthening and supports so they can start adopting those and implementing them, or doing grant writing. Like I said, right now we have a couple of large grants going, Prop 47 funding. It's the part that's getting allocated to schools, but how can our local schools benefit from this and do programs that it's really around engaging students, decreasing truancy and absenteeism, and increasing the graduation rate. And then another area is graffiti tracking and reporting. And so that's something that, as a trend, I didn't mention it, I would say probably up until about 8 months ago, we had a very, very, very quiet time on new graffiti. But now, in the past 8 months, we've had an increase in incidents of graffiti and gang graffiti, which is vandalism as well. And that's an area where we need to work on developing our resources for removal of it. Because one of the tenets around graffiti is, you see it, you report it, you remove it, and it should happen as quickly as possible. So one area that I hear a lot from is out at the old hospital there. That building has a lot of graffiti outside, and if anybody ever ventures in it, it's really not just filled with graffiti inside, but it's kind of a health hazard in there. So those are things that we're working on actively in the area of gang prevention and intervention and suppression. And at this point, are there any questions or comments that anybody would like to raise?
Supervisor Patello?
Yeah, I just even on your last point there about the graffiti tracking and reporting, I imagine your department and probation department kind of keeps a pretty good idea of what's going on with that graffiti and as far as gang activity in an area. Just the other day, I went to Rite Aid pick up a prescription, and on the back wall of Mountain Mike's, it was just graffiti all over the place, up on the higher levels, and I thought, oh man, and just yesterday I went by there and it was gone. So it's reporting, tracking, and then who does the cleanup? The property owner, or do we have the gang members who are on probation to do it, or juvenile hall, or what?
Yeah, so you bring up a really great point, and I would just like to let everybody know that all of us have a responsibility in the removal of graffiti, or at least reporting it. And you could call, if it's in the city, you could call the City of Hollister's non-emergency number and say, hey, there's graffiti on this building. If it's in the county, it would be the Sheriff Department's non-emergency number, and you give them the location of where it is and when you saw it. And in the city, it's through, if it's on a building or a business, then code enforcement will be the ones that let the landlord know they have 72 hours, I believe it is, to remove it. Otherwise, there can be a penalty associated with it. In the county, right now, we don't have that resource in place for that. We used to have an inmate crew with the jail that was able to get out there and remove it, and Public Works had some crews that were removing it. Right now there's some things out there we'd like to get out, but we don't have that in place right now. So
is that an ordinance that this board would have to adopt at some point in the future, or to address that?
I don't think it's an ordinance issue in the county. I think there is an ordinance that it's against graffiti on buildings, and so it's usually the property owner. If it's on private property, then the property owner needs to remove it themselves. So then it's just a matter of follow-up and enforcement through code enforcement. But if it's on something like a guardrail or a bridge or something that's the county owns, then that's the question. How do we get that removed? And I'm not sure the answer on that right now.
Well,
thank you. Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that item's actually come up a few times. I believe Supervisor Rivas has notified administration about that. We've actually contacted our Public Works office. I believe that same day, that evening, they went out and removed it. So our RMA department, our Public Works office, will do that as well. So we just need to know, when that happens and when it's on public property, and we'll, I'll make sure that we can do what we can administratively.
Thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Al for the update. I know it had been a while since we had gotten an update about gang activity and about just this. But so thank you for all the the work and so certainly moving forward, I think if you can just keep us updated. I know we have the gang prevention, the policy committee, but certainly it seems like in the past when we had all those bullying. The prevention grants, those seem to be very effective, and so certainly, do you see more of that, or is there some funding maybe in the future where we can really keep addressing that level of intervention, I guess, at the school
right
level?
And I think right now what we're working on, there are a couple of applications in play right now, and one of them, Hollister School District, is working on one, and they're considered a priority district. When it's based on, right now the determinants are free and reduced lunch percentage if it's above what the state is, and they're looking at suspension and expulsion rates. And it's all about, the intervention is really about positive behavior, intervention, and supports. So youth at schools that are having negative behavior, how do you not just punish them for it, but how do you help them develop positive behaviors and respond from in a positive way? So you're changing the behavior down the road, not punishing them, but also engagement and keeping kids in school. So that, and then also at the Office of Ed.
So, I want to thank the board for approving this morning the Restorative Justice Initiative with the school district. That actually is a strategy to help kids and youth when they get themselves in trouble early on to develop those types of skills so that they don't proceed further. I've made no secret to at least my staff that a portion of my line staff career was actually spent as a task force agent, specifically working with gangs. And I bragged to the other chief probation officers across the state that I got this. We got this here. We got Al as gang prevention coordinator. I've repeatedly stated that, especially dealing with gangs, it's a three-pronged approach. And it is suppression. You need to continue to do that. You need to continue to show that the behavior is unacceptable in the community. It is also prevention, to prevent the kids from entering into the system, of the ones that start to get further in, programs like GREAT, programs like we run through the San Benito County PAL, the Restorative Justice Initiatives, helping kids make better decisions. And what probation is usually tasked with is the intervention of the people that we already have and making sure they make better decisions and get themselves out. So it's a three-pronged approach, and that approach needs to be equal in measure across the board, because when it's off balance, it doesn't work as well. It's not as effective. So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in with that.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Al. I remember when we first hired you. Was that about 6-7 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. We made the right choice.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other comments from the board? No? Let me open to the public. Anyone from the public?
Thank you, Chase.
None? Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. Thank you. Thank you, Al. All right. We're going to move a little bit away from the regular agenda, and we're going to do number 25. Chief?
25?
Yeah. We're going to skip 24 for right now.
Okay.
And we have we got to go to closed session around 11:30. That's why.
That's right. Morning, members of the board, Mr. Chair. Is there a way to turn this off? So in the interest of time and I guess everyone's stomach, I'll try to be brief. So at the request of Supervisor Rivas, I believe, and the Juvenile Justice Commission, we wanted an update on basically the repairs at Juvenile Hall. The 2015-2016 grand jury report indicated that the recreation yard at Juvenile Hall is in disrepair and needs maintenance. This issue was also indicated in the 14-15 report and the 15-16 report, and wanted to know where were we with that. I am pleased to say that last year, this board, your board, had approved a funding stream of $120,000 to repair the recreation yard. We had not been able to move forward with any construction at this point for a variety of reasons. I think last year, or this fiscal year, we had a little issue with water, and Public Works might have been redirected in terms of their efforts. As we looked at Juvenile Hall overall, we actually identified a number of issues or concerns, and in addition to the rec yard, which need to be resurfaced. And all of these were really surrounding safety and bringing us up to spec with the current regulations. Some of it is the fencing around the juvenile hall. We have, especially recently with the wind, we have a confidential barrier which prevents sight from outside, and that actually broke down a little bit. We recently had our camera system go down, which is not really a good thing for us inside a facility. We have some concerns about and issues around our current internal shower system. They will not meet incoming PREA regulations, which is the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which has the impact of federal law. So we need to do some updates there. There's a small area of carpeting, which actually, due to its disrepair, is actually now creating a safety hazard due to possible tripping. Our parking lot is in need of restriping to bring us into compliance with the ADA. Our recreation room ceiling, actually, when I look at it, it could use some maintenance because tiles could fall, hit a kid, staff. And our backflow system, I'm not a plumber, so I'm not quite sure what that is or how that works, but our backflow system is in need of repair according to our internal regulations and our outside doors. These 10 things that I've mentioned were mentioned not only by inside or county inspectors, but also anecdotally by the Board of State and Community Corrections. Having been here 3 years, I've gone through 2 of the inspections. The next one is coming up this fall. And it was not noted in the actual report, but I was told, it's like, you know what are you going to do about this? And each time I was able to have, and we did have an idea, a plan, and it steadily moved forward. So I'm not saying we're not progressing, we're just progressing at a rather slow rate. Each of these items is really about the safety and security of the facility for the staff, for the youth, for the volunteers and visitors that come in, to make sure that no one gets unduly exposed or hurt or something like that. Last year, as I mentioned earlier, the county had allocated $120,000 for the rec yard. I wanted to thank Melinda Casillas and our CAO. Due to some very diligent work, we were able to identify an additional funding stream, which is not county general fund dollars, dedicated towards corrections, which could be used to actually augment this and come up with a plan to bring up our juvenile hall so that we don't have further problems. I look at this as kind of a 4-step kind of philosophical thing for myself. You address concerns before they become issues. You deal with issues before they become problems. You fix problems before they become something critical. And what we have right here is actually a really good opportunity to address concerns and issues and a couple of problems before they become something critical. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Adam Goldstone. We've talked throughout my entire 3 years here with RMA on how we're going to best do this to best use the limited funds we have and best be good stewards with the county dollar. So, Adam.
Good morning. So, some of these issues have been known, as Chief Braun indicated, for some time now. Some of them are more recent. Some of them are evolving. It was just in this most recent budget year that some funds were allocated to some of these efforts. I unfortunately have not been able to work on it as quickly as I had hoped, or as some of the issues need. So one of the options now with some of this additional funding that may be available, and given the somewhat increased scope of some of these issues that have occurred recently, would be to get some more help, get a consultant to do the bid documents, so that we can address these all as a singular project, which will save time and impact on operations as well as cost. Initially, these were things that could be at least designed in-house. We could not perform all of them in-house, the actual construction, but they could have been designed, but there's just not enough time given all the other funding deadlines on other projects and things like that. So given that this is now becoming a very short fuse item due to the upcoming inspections, that is my intent and recommendation, is that we get some help to prepare the bid documents, get this thing out to bid, as much as we can afford to do within the budget that will be adopted hopefully this summer, and get this place taken care of and up to a minimum responsible level.
Questions? Actually, I want to hear from Ray first. Ray?
So, as was mentioned a few minutes ago, staff has met. We're going through the budget process right now. I know that there was some allocations already, but this next year, obviously, there's some additional items. So we're in the process of addressing those items. I know there's a lot on Adam's plate right now. I know we're going to talk about the jail construction, which I think has been taking a lot of his time. We're going to probably talk about that, and possibly construction management company to come help us to kind of relieve him in some of these duties. He has quite a few things in his plate right now. So with that being said, I think there is an option that that Adam had just mentioned about bringing somebody in to help with this, but at this point, I think we still need to, sharpen our pencils, still need to address it and go a little further into this. But that's basically what I have to say right now.
Now, we do have some money set aside this year for the facility, right?
Yes, it was $120,000, and that was to address the rec yard first, and whatever else we could do.
I just wonder if the board can give some authority to use that money, because you have a deadline of what, fall, right, or for the next inspection.
So you're tall. The next inspection, while not set in stone, is anticipated to start occurring this fall. So with the Board of State and Community Corrections, having had discussions with them in the past, it's anticipated that as long as we're continuing to move forward, we should be fine. It'd be one of those things where if we're the exact same spot we were at the last inspection, I think we might have a couple things to talk about. By the way, I did want to thank my juvenile hall superintendent, Mr. Frontella, because when he came here, he had a wealth of experience, not only just in probation, but running juvenile facilities, and he was able to really bird dog a lot of these issues and help identify them from the ground level. So that was great for him and for us. And like I said, our ability at this point to really address problems and concerns and issues before they become something bigger, which would cost us more and actually have to become something urgent. Now we can plan around it, which is great.
Thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I want to thank staff and obviously the Juvenile Justice, the Commission for bringing this to my attention at the last meeting that I had attended. And so I think, I'd like to follow Adam's recommendation that let's kick it back to staff. Let's have them come back with some recommendations. Certainly there's a laundry list of issues we have out there at the juvenile hall, and I had brought forward what the grand jury had stated, which was the recreational yard. But certainly, if we could do this in-house, that would be great. But it sounds like this is probably beyond the scope of our ability to handle the job. So I would like to, get some estimates, and if we need to go out to bid, we go out to bid. But at least we get the process going, and then we could begin this process. So, all right. Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you, staff. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. Supervisor Patella?
Yeah, I want to support Supervisor Rivas on that suggestion. And I think we need to have that list of issues that we need to correct and probably prioritize safety issues first and then work down from there. We're not going to solve all the problems, but we have to start cracking at them. And, if we have $120,000 to work with right now, let's go to work off and knock off things on that priority list. And by doing nothing and just talking about it, those problems are turned into, what did you say? Whatever it's be.
Concerns
but,
to issues,
bigger
problems,
problems. And what concerns me is the safety issues as well.
Okay. Thank you. Let me open up to the public. Okay, I'll bring it back. I think you got consensus. Come back and provide a report to the board. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Now
Thank
we will
you,
go
support.
Thank you, Chief. We will now go to closed session. Barbara, that one item.
Yes, the closed session that we'll be going into is number 29, closed session pursuant to Section 54956.95, liability claims in conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, subdivisions A and D1 of Section 54956.9, name a case, Egan versus County of San Benito, Sheriff's Office, Trindle Insurance Fund, Workers' Comp Appeal Board, case number ADJ 100497774. Claimant is Patricia Egan, agency claimed against the San Benito County, member of the Trindle Insurance Fund.
You know what? Go ahead. Also do number 28. I have a feeling we'll probably be able to do those two in closed session.
And also number 28 is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to subdivision D4 of Government Code, Section 54956.9, number of cases 2.
Okay. Anyone from the public wish to discuss those two items to the board? Then, okay, we will go to closed session, and after 12 o'clock, we'll go to lunch and come back at 1:30? 1:15? 1:15.
No, 1:30.
1:15. 1:30? 1:30. 1:30. We'll be back at 1:30.